do you believe that Paddock was even involved in this to begin with, or was he just a patsy and is sort of being blamed for this when, really, was there, were the actual shooters somebody who've just never been named?
Well, it's interesting because they're obviously covering up his connections in the way that they've totally whitewashed his records and kept his information private from the public. And the thing about Paddock, what's interesting is the fact that he has ties to the government, right? His plane traced back as being a government plane. He worked with Lockheed Martin, the individual who was arrested for selling body piercing armor to him, works for the government as well. And there's all these strange connections. And then ISIS comes out and claims that Stephen Paddock is one of their soldiers, and that Stephen Paddock converted to Islam 6 months prior to the Vegas shooting. And so I believe ISIS in the sense that I believe this was an ISIS terrorist attack. In the report that just came out, the final report, this would have been nice to know, I don't know, 10 months ago. But 24 guns were retrieved from Paddock's room, and investigators said that he used 14 of them. It doesn't add up. And it could be that Stephen Paddock himself really was an ISIS soldier, but he was also a government informant, and this was some type of operation gone wrong. And that's truly what I believe, because none of the aspects of this investigation match up. For example, they said that Stephen Paddock transferred $100,000 to the Philippines. Well, the Philippines, as we know, is an ISIS hotbed. And after we found this information out, the first thing I thought of was, well, if Stephen Paddock had transferred $100,000 to the Philippines, his account would have been flagged, because everybody knows that if you transfer $10,000 or more, whether it be in your own bank account, internationally, domestically, your account gets flagged and there's a report sent and it gets sent to this database and it's investigated. The FBI gets notified because banks are supposed to pay attention to suspicious or large transfers, and it puts a marker on your account if you, regardless of how wealthy you are, whether you're doing transfers of that much or not. So it just makes no sense that the FBI would have no previous knowledge of Paddock. And then I confirmed this, actually. My suspicion caused me to investigate further. And then I found, while looking through some of these documents that were released very, very quietly by court order by LVMPD, his ex-wife did a witness testimony to one of the police officers during an interview, a police interview, when I guess she was being interrogated. And she said that one of Paddock's bank accounts had been shut down prior to the Vegas shooting on suspicion of terrorism. So that automatically means that the FBI lied, and investigators lied when they said they had no prior information regarding Paddock, because his bank account was literally flagged and shut down on suspicion of terror financing, which means that an investigation or some type of financial report automatically would have had to have been filed per policy.
And I think it's a federal law that anything over 10,000 has to be flagged, and
Yeah,
paperwork has to
that's
be filled out for
exactly
that.
that's what I said. It's $10,000. It gets flagged. So you can read my reports about this as well, but there's just a lot of things that don't add up. And then also too, they're now conveniently calling it a terrorist attack, like I said, because that's their little loophole, their way to get out of paying out the victims, right? So right now, Mandalay Bay is probably facing, or MGM, since they own Mandalay Bay, they're going to have probably $1 billion worth of legal fees. Honestly, $1 billion, if you think about it, with all of the damages and the people and the lawsuits. I mean, we're talking about multi-million-dollar lawsuits, thousands of victims. And they don't want to pay out that money. So what are they doing? They are now claiming that this was terrorism, even though they said it wasn't terrorism for the past 9 or 10 months. And they're claiming, well, they're citing the Support Anti-Terrorism by Fostering Effective Technologies Act. That's what it's called. And that was passed after 2002. And it was a federal law enacted after 9/11. And the federal law basically limits liability for terrorist attacks when anti-terrorism technologies have been deployed. So that's what they're claiming now. And that's why there's a problem here, because when Sheriff Lombardo gave the final press conference 2, 3 weeks ago, and he said, oh, well, I personally think it's terrorism. That's Sheriff Lombardo's way of covering MGM, who has been giving him tons of money for his reelection campaign, which he won, right? So now you have an issue because the FBI has to determine whether something is terrorism, and they're saying it's not terrorism. But then you have Sheriff Lombardo and MGM now amidst this lawsuit against the victims, saying that it was terrorism, right? And you have to ask yourself, what type of company sues victims of a shooting, right? It's pretty disgusting.
Absolutely. I don't think anybody listening could, in their minds, justify that. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in those court
And
cases.
someone else said, what do you make of James Brower's claims that Paddock made pro-ISIS videos? I've been saying that. I think I was one of the first to report on that. One of the things they brushed under the rug was the fact that a baby monitor camera was used during the shooting. So what is a baby camera monitor? What is the significance of that? I mean, do you know? I know, but I'm asking you because a lot of people don't know this. What's the significance of using a baby camera monitor as opposed to a regular camera? They said that Paddock had set up a camera to monitor people coming down the halls as a form of surveillance. But what is the significance of a baby camera
Uh,
monitor?
does it have something to do with the way it transmits?
Yeah, and how does it transmit?
Is it? It's not IR, is it?
It's a Wi-Fi transmission. So it means that if you have a baby camera monitor, you can transmit it to any location in the world as long as you have a Wi-Fi signal. So as opposed to a security camera where you have to monitor it from your location, a baby monitor camera would allow you to transmit the video or the audio to another location. So either somebody else was watching this or he was filming it to another location to who could watch. And that's kind of what ISIS does, right? When we look at what ISIS does, they generally record things and they film propaganda videos and they make these videos. Who was on the receiving end of the baby camera monitor transmission? Because there was no point of Stephen Paddock to use a baby camera monitor unless he was transmitting a signal to another person at a different location. You know what I'm saying?
So then, why do you think we have not seen any of this footage released by ISIS or used in any of their promotional videos?
Well, the thing is ISIS has threatened Vegas prior to the Vegas shooting, and afterwards they doubled down and they released a poster of Mandalay Bay covered in blood and took responsibility. And I think that maybe ISIS is holding on to it, or maybe maybe there's other individuals who have been apprehended, or maybe it's in the possession of the feds and they're not releasing it. But it could have been, like I said, some type of operation gone wrong, because we're not getting the full story about Stephen Paddock. And also, too, I had uncovered that there were 3 women in the room, and this was even transcribed in the official police logs from the night of the shooting. And then they came out and they're like, well, this was just a mistake in our system. But trust me, I mean, that's not true. And I can't divulge everything because I'm currently in the middle of working on an aspect of my investigation that I haven't made public yet. Just for reasons that it would jeopardize the investigation if I were to release this info right now. But just know that they are lying when they say that 3 women were not in that room.